What if I told you there was a war that changed America forever? A war that shaped its power, its politics, even its fears. And yet, most Americans today can't even name it. It wasn't fought for oil. It wasn't fought for gold. It was fought for an idea. Freedom versus communism. And it almost ended the world as we know it. This is the story of the forgotten war. The war that changed America forever. The Korean War. After World War II, the world was broken. Cities across Europe were piles of rubble. Nations were rebuilding. But two superpowers were rising. The United States and the Soviet Union. The Cold War had begun. In Asia, a small country called Korea was split in two. The North, supported by the Soviets, and the South, backed by America. Most people in Washington didn't think much of it. Just another faraway place on the map. But on June 25, 1950, everything changed. North Korean tanks crossed the border, the 38th parallel. It was invasion. It was chaos. And suddenly, America was at war again. President Harry Truman faced an impossible decision. The U.S. had just survived World War II. Families were still mourning. Soldiers were still healing. But Truman knew, if America didn't stop communism in Korea, where would it stop? Japan, Europe, the world? Within days, American troops were on Korean soil. But this wasn't World War II. There was no victory parade, no glory. Just mud, frost, and fear. They called it a police action. But what happened next was hell. Imagine freezing winds, minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit, guns jamming, fingers turning black with frostbite. And out of the darkness, waves of Chinese soldiers screaming down from the mountains. At Chosin Reservoir, 17,000 American Marines were surrounded by 120,000 Chinese troops. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and freezing to death. But they fought. They never gave up. They called themselves the Chosen Few. And somehow, they broke through. They made it out alive. Barely. That's the kind of courage the world never saw on the evening news. By 1951, the front lines barely moved. Thousands died for a few miles of ground. Peace talks started, but dragged on for 2 long, bloody years. Back home, people stopped paying attention. No one understood what they were fighting for anymore. There were no victory headlines, no heroes on TV. It was a war nobody wanted, and a war nobody could win. When the armistice was finally signed in 1953, nothing really changed. The border stayed the same. North and South Korea remained divided, just like before. So why does this war matter? Because the Korean War became the blueprint for every American war that followed. It was the first war fought to contain communism, the first war under the United Nations, the first time America realized you can't always win with bombs and bravery alone. It also created something new, the military-industrial complex, massive defense budgets, permanent bases across the world. America became not just a country, but a global power. And the soldiers who fought there, they came home to silence. No one clapped, no one asked, no one remembered. That's why they call it the Forgotten War. Over 36,000 American lives lost. Millions of Koreans dead or displaced. Entire cities burned to ash. But out of that destruction rose 2 nations, South Korea, one of the richest democracies in the world, and North Korea, one of the most isolated regimes on earth. 1 war, 2 worlds. A line drawn in blood, still dividing families today. Every time you hear about tension in the Pacific, every time you see a missile launched from Pyongyang, every time America talks about protecting freedom, remember this. It all began here. A war few wanted, a war few understood, a war that changed America forever. So next time someone calls it the Forgotten War, remember the faces that froze in those mountains, the names carved into stone, and the lessons that still echo today. Because history isn't just what we remember, it's what we refuse to forget. The Forgotten War, the Korean War story. Subscribe for more untold stories that shaped our world.